Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Two major news stories we're covering for you this week that have grabbed the attention of the entire world. The first is a statement Pope Francis made that has gay Catholics everywhere very excited, and the second is a 9-month peace plan between the Israelis and Palestinians.
Now, the second one I'm very interested in. Looks as though the Roman Catholic Church is doing its own coming out of sorts, backed up by a recent statement from Pope Francis in an interview on his papal plane as he was heading back to Italy. His statement, "If a person is gay and seeks the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge that person?" The Catholic Church still stands behind its belief that homosexual acts are a sin.
CBS's Dean Reynolds reported from Brazil, where the Pope spent a week visiting. His statements were made on the returning flight back to the Vatican. As Francis was interviewed, he was asked specifically about a gay lobby in the Vatican, and Francis said that he knew nothing of it. He broadened his answer to gays in general.
In addition to the statement he made earlier, Francis added, "The problem is not that one has this tendency. No, we must be brothers." Now, Michael Herman, a gay Catholic and former priest who quit the Catholic Church in 2006 after he said he felt the church intended to purge gays, made a few statements. But of course, before we get to those statements, in the past, the Catholic Church called homosexuality depravity, contrary to natural law, and can never be approved.
Even Pope Benedict XVI said as recently as 2005 that homosexuality was incompatible with the priesthood. Now, Mark Herman, when he was asked if he thought that the Pope was breaking with the Vatican, he said no. His comments had nothing to do with the sexual morality teachings of the Church. In regards to the question of ordaining women to the priesthood, the Pope's answer was no, that door is closed. We'll be hearing more about this later on in our broadcast. Actually, we have a little bit more on this story.
Okay. To offer a few thoughts now as we continue this coverage on the controversy, New York Bishop Timothy Dolan recently made an appearance on CBS's morning show. Larry McGee has our coverage. Larry, have the new Pope's comments created a division amongst its ranks, or is Bishop Dolan seem to be in agreement?
They definitely appear to be in agreement, guys, as the president of the U.S. Conference of Bishops, Timothy Dolan, in an interview with veteran journalists this week, attempted to provide perspective regarding the Pope's recent statement. According to Archbishop Dolan, the Pope's recent comment reflects the traditional teachings of the Church that while certain acts may be wrong, it would always strive to love and respect the person and treat them with dignity. For Archbishop Dolan, the new pontiff's remarks represent not so much a change in doctrine, but a change in tone, and in answering the question as to what it would take for the Church to change its public stance on homosexuality as being sin. The Archbishop was quick to cite the psychology of Catholic theory, which holds that homosexuality is not a sin, but homosexual acts are. In the end, Cardinal Dolan says this latest event will go a long way in showing that while Catholicism is rather cogent in its teaching, it is equally compelling in its graciousness and mercy and respect with which it should say it. And he welcomes the new Pope's comment as an opportunity to bring to the fore that other aspect of style and tone. Telling words for a newly elected and installed papal regime, which is quickly developing a reputation for its skill and craft. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan, Jeff, back to you.
Kind of confusing.
Yeah, seems like it.
Well, during that hour-and-a-half interview with the Pope, he also made other statements regarding the Catholic priesthood. He said that he wouldn't presume to judge priests for their sexual orientation and that they should not be marginalized. Now, Brian Finnerty with Opus Dei, an institution of the Catholic Church, was interviewed and gave his perspective in regards to this latest proclamation by the Pope.
When he asked if the Pope broke with church doctrine, he responded, no, he did not. In fact, he, referring to the Pope, referred back to another church doctrine called the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Now, Jeff, that particular book is a book that Israel Hawkins has referenced many times throughout his many years of teaching, and also in many of the books that he has authored over the last 30 or 40 years, exposing the harmful teachings of the Catholic Church.
Well, Finnerty continued, referring to the book, he said that homosexual acts are sinful, but that homosexual persons should be treated with dignity and respect, and that it's not something that they actually have chosen. And that's precisely what the Pope said. Now, back in 2007, Pope Benedict signed a doctrine that said that men who have same-sex attractions should not become priests. And now Francis is saying, who am I to judge? Finnerty stated that's exactly what the Church has always said.
Sounds like a lot of confusion. Now, the Catholic Church doctrine states that those feelings of homosexuality are not a sin, but to act on those feelings, yes, that's a sin. Many think that the Pope is changing church policy, for example, refusing the lavish papal apartment that the popes pretty much live in, not driving in the bulletproof car, and also getting security all stirred up by going out and being amongst the crowds, as he especially did in this recent trip to Brazil. Of course, this is making conservatives of the church very unhappy.
Well, Finnerty stated that Francis is somebody who passionately loves people, and that was seen as he rode the train to work as an archbishop. Now, the starting point to any conversation in regards to the Pope's actions, Finnerty said, is whatever you are, Jesus loves you.
Now, just as a note, paraphrasing, from the book Catechism of the Catholic Church, 2357, the book states that homosexuality refers to relations between men or between women who experience an exclusive or predominant sexual attraction toward a person of the same sex. It has had a great and varying form through the centuries and in different cultures, and that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered and they are contrary to the natural law. Notice he says natural law, or the book says natural law. It doesn't talk anything about scriptures, though.
Finnerty finished by saying, in regard to that doctrine and the difference in tone with this Pope, is that he believes that gays should be treated with compassion and respect, and that they're called to a life of holiness like everybody else, and that the Pope has chosen an element of compassion as a way to reach out to people instead of the law. Now, he said that before you can know the law, you have to know Jesus and the church, that they both love you.
Pope Francis' controversial statements came after his 6-day visit to Brazil, which drew an audience of millions. His tour included a walk through Rio de Janeiro's worst slums, and his papal mass on Copacabana Beach was attended by about 3 million worshipers, which was one of the biggest in recent history.
Now, not much was said about the Pope's address that day, but the comments that, as we mentioned, that he made on the flight back to Italy drew national attention. It was there that journalists on board asked a series of questions on controversial issues, such as the role women should play in the church and, of course, the gay rights.
It was there that Pope Francis said, "Everyone writes about the gay lobby. I still haven't found anyone who gives me an identity card with gay written on it. All lobbies are not good. That is the bad thing. If a person is gay and seeks the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge him?"
Now, the Pope upheld the Catholic ban on women priests, but added the Madonna, Mary, was more important than the apostles, bishops, deacons, and priests. Women in the church are more important than bishops and priests. I think we have to do better at getting this message across. I think we're missing a theological explanation of this, he said.
I think I totally missed that. Now, although this was the first foreign trip for Pope Francis, his frank and open answers on the flight will probably make this trip most likely to be remembered for.
Now, further developments this week in the road to peace between Israel and Palestine. Following 2 days of talks at the State Department, Israeli and Palestinian negotiators have agreed to more peace talks, including issues that have stalled these talks in the past. Secretary of State John Kerry said they are on the table with one simple goal, a view to ending the conflict, ending the claims. What is the goal that Mr. Kerry is referring to? Kerry went on to say achieving a final status agreement during the next 9 months. Now let's go ahead and play Secretary of State John Kerry's speech. Listen to this.
I'm delighted to stand here. I think it's still morning. It is still. With Minister Tzipi Livni and Dr. Erekad, both of whom I've had the privilege of knowing for some period of time and enjoyed working with for all of it. As all of you know, it has taken an awful lot of work and a lot of time to reach this new moment of possibility in the pursuit of an end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's taken the leadership of President Obama, who set this process in motion with his historic visit to the region this spring. And then he spoke powerfully about the necessity and possibility of peace, not only to the leaders, but also to citizens who overwhelmingly hope for a better future for their children and for their countries, for their peoples. The President's support for our efforts, including his personal engagement with the parties this morning, has been essential, and I thank him for that. And we had a very positive meeting with the President and the Vice President earlier this morning at the White House. I want to also emphasize that Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas have both demonstrated courageous leadership to bring us here. And I commend them for the tough choices that they made in terms of the politics at home. I know the path is difficult. There is no shortage of passionate skeptics. But with capable, respected negotiators like Minister Tzipi Livni and Dr. Erekad standing side by side here today and last night sharing an iftar meal together with all of us, with their efforts, their expertise, and their commitment, I'm convinced that we can get there. We're here today because the Israeli people and the Palestinian people both have leaders willing to heed the call of history. Leaders who will stand strong in the face of criticism and are right now for what they know is in their people's best interests. Their commitment to make tough choices, frankly, should give all of us hope that these negotiations actually have a chance to accomplish something. I'm pleased to report that in the conversations we've had last night and again today, we've had constructive and positive meetings, both meetings with the United States President and also meetings with the parties by themselves. The parties have agreed to remain engaged in sustained, continuous, and substantive negotiations on the core issues, and they will meet within the next 2 weeks in either Israel or the Palestinian territories in order to begin the process of formal negotiation. The parties have agreed here today that all of the final status issues, all of the core issues, and all other issues are all on the table for negotiation. And they are on the table with one simple goal, a view to ending the conflict, ending the claims. Our objective will be to achieve a final status agreement over the course of the next 9 months. The parties also agreed that the two sides will keep the content of the negotiations confidential. The only announcement you will hear about meetings is the one that I just made. And I will be the only one, by agreement, authorized to comment publicly on the talks in consultation, obviously, with the parties. That means that no one should consider any reports, articles, or even rumors reliable unless they come directly from me, and I guarantee you they won't. The United States will work continuously with both parties as a facilitator every step of the way. We all understand the goal that we're working towards. Two states living side by side in peace and security, two states because two proud peoples each deserve a country to call their own. Two states because the children of both peoples deserve the opportunity to realize their legitimate aspirations in security and in freedom. And two states because the time has come for a lasting peace. We all appreciate, believe me, we appreciate the challenges ahead. But even as we look down the difficult road that is before us and consider the complicated choices that we face, we cannot lose sight of something that is often forgotten in the Middle East, and that is what awaits everybody with success. We need to actually change the way we think about compromise in order to get to success. Compromise doesn't only mean giving up something or giving something away. Reasonable, principled compromise in the name of peace means that everybody stands to gain. Each side has a stake in the other's success, and everyone can benefit from the dividends of peace. We simply wouldn't be standing here if the leaders, President Abbas and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and their designated negotiators, and all of us together didn't believe that we could get there. We can envision a day when Palestinians can finally realize their aspirations for a flourishing state of their own. And the groundbreaking economic initiative that we've been working on with the Quartet and with Tony Blair and others, with the help of the private sector, can help transform the Palestinian economy and build up unprecedented markets and unblock waves of foreign investment. And we shouldn't forget that the new jobs, the new homes, the new industries that can grow in a new Palestinian state will also benefit Israelis next door, where a vibrant economy will find new partners. We can also envision a day when Israelis actually can truly live in peace, not just the absence of conflict, but a full and a lasting peace with Arab and Muslim nations, an end once and for all to the pernicious attacks on Israel's legitimacy. Israel and Israelis and Palestinians both have legitimate security concerns. Our commitment to Israel's security is why President Obama's administration has done more than any before it to strengthen our unshakable bond, and why General John Allen is on the ground working to ensure Israel's security needs will be met. And I emphasize, we have worked very closely with our Palestinian friends to help develop Palestinian security capacity. And we cannot forget that the security of Israel will also benefit Palestinians next door. The Israeli government has recognized this, which is why it will be taking in the next days and weeks a number of steps in order to improve conditions in the West Bank and in Gaza. And the Palestinian security forces have recognized this, which is why we have seen such a dramatic improvement in law and order and such a dramatic decrease in terror attacks originating from the West Bank. The Israeli and Palestinian people understand their common interests, and that's why they continue to take positive steps on the ground to improve relations between themselves. I also want to point out that the Arab League understands this too, which is why it has reaffirmed the Arab Peace Initiative and provided vital statements of support for this process. Finally, I just say everywhere I go, leaders from around the world understand that they share a stake in this endeavor's success. They all have a role to play, which is why they have continued to contribute to this effort, to advise, to make commitments of support, and to push and advocate and encourage the parties every step of the way. And President Obama and I join in thanking all of them for their concern and initiative. So many things are already happening. When somebody tells you that Israelis and Palestinians cannot find common ground or address the issues that divide them, don't believe them. Just look at the things they are doing together and trying to do together. There are many reasons why we need to solve this conflict, but none more important than the security and the dignity of the next generations of Israelis and Palestinians, Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and the generations who will follow them and benefit from these negotiations, hopefully. I think everyone involved here believes that we cannot pass along to another generation the responsibility of ending a conflict that is in our power to resolve in our time. They should not be expected to bear that burden, and we should not leave it to them. They should not be expected to bear the pain of continued conflict or perpetual war. So while I understand the skepticism, I don't share it, and I don't think we have time for it. I firmly believe the leaders, the negotiators, and citizens invested in this effort can make peace for one simple reason: because they must. A viable two-state solution is the only way this conflict can end, and there is not much time to achieve it, and there is no other alternative. We all need to be strong in our belief in the possibility of peace, courageous enough to follow through on our faith in it, and audacious enough to achieve what these two peoples have so long aspired to and deserve.
Now, at the same address, Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekad said it's time for the Palestinian people to have an independent sovereign state of their own. Now, Zippy Livni, the Israeli chief negotiator, added, "I can assure you that in these negotiations, it's our intention not to argue about the past. Both sides see a difficult road ahead."
Yossi Bilan, former Israeli negotiator, stated, "In 9 months to bridge the gap between the Israeli government and the Palestinian Liberation Organization seems very, very difficult." And of course, there are those who are skeptical that 9 months will be enough time to reach the goal of peace. Right. Now, a date for the next round of negotiations hasn't been set yet, but they will take place in either Israel or the Palestinian territories by the middle of August.
Well, utter confusion as it seems in our world as mankind struggles to find himself and hope in a dark world. Yeshua Hawkins has taught for years that the scriptures show that mankind will be allowed to go his own way for 6,000 years, but that throughout that time period, the Creator sent men called prophets to warn mankind of what their choices would bring and guide them in the eternal laws of peace. Right now, in our day, Yeshua Hawkins claims to be one such man, a witness who has been brought up by the Creator Yahweh as a light to this dark world, offering clarity, hope, and true peace to all who will listen. And one of the things that he has offered in many of his publications in regards to the last article that we were talking about with the 9 months and the negotiations of peace between Palestine and Israel is in his book that he wrote in the late 70s entitled Mark of the Beast, Volumes 1 and 2, and also the book that he wrote in the mid-90s entitled The End. Here's what you can do to find out more information.
Well, you can contact the House of Yahweh and request your free monthly newsletter or Prophetic Word magazine. You can also ask them how you can obtain a copy of The Birth of the Nuclear Baby, The Explosion of Sin. Now, you can write the House of Yahweh at The House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit them on either of their websites. The first one, www.yahweh.com or www.yeshuahawkins.com. You can also email them at info@yahweh.com. And for any calls outside the United States, you can call the number that's on your screen now.
Now for something to really get excited about. Up next, Yeshua Hawkins. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for joining us.